Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
It's about seeking truth. It's about speaking truth. It's about keeping it real. That's what we do at Truth Seeker Nation. We keep it 100. Real talk all the time. Let's get it.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to the first official episode of the Truth Seeker Nation podcast. My name is Tawana, and I am your host. Now, I say the first official because last week was just an introduction, me telling you about myself and what to expect in this podcast. And so one of the topics I mentioned last week is where I want to start with the conversation. I spoke about self-government versus being governed by other people. This topic is a good place to start because there are so many different aspects of this, different layers. There's a depth to it that I want to get to the heart of. I really want to talk to you about a whole lot that comes from accepting this belief system and living by this ideology. And you notice that even though it's a longer phrase, I use the term being governed by other people in place of the word government. And the reason why I do this is very strategic because sometimes it's important not to use certain words, but to get to what does the word actually mean and actually say those words instead. I have found, and you might find that this applies to you as well, that when I was trying to get out of certain belief systems and I was successful at doing that, I found that it was necessary for me to really think about the belief in its simplest terms and what it actually was that I was accepting or believing. Because when I say the word government, it evokes a certain emotion. You think of a massive conglomeration, which it is that. But there's certain feelings of intimidation that also come up in your psyche. But when you think of the term being governed by other people, you notice how I said it like that, being governed by other people, right? That's almost what it makes you do because it sounds more absurd. It sounds more insulting. It's like, why do I need to be governed by other people? I don't need to listen to nobody else. I'm grown. Right? And we know this as a matter of principle, but it's somehow different when it comes to the government. And obviously there's a lot of reasons for that, the society, the religions, even the Bible, but that is another topic. Definitely something we will probably discuss in the future. But for today, for right now, let's get into the aspect of this that I would like to discuss. It comes from a well-known document that I know you've all heard of called the Constitution, specifically the Declaration of Independence. But don't worry, I'm not about to give you a history lesson and get all into the Constitution, but I believe that mentioning this particular thing is going to add weight to the conversation that we're about to get into. But let me just state this real fast before I even mention this part. I don't need a Declaration of Independence written by man to tell me what it means to be independent or what my rights are or what I'm doing or supposed to be able to do when moving through this earth, okay? That just needed to be stated. But the only reason I'm referencing this document is because this is the foundation upon which they say this system is built. Although we know and we can clearly see that that's not what it is, but this is what they claim. Okay? So this is in this pocket constitution, which is probably not relevant, but maybe somebody may want to join me and look at this with me. So the Declaration of Independence is on page 35. It's just going to be a very short part that I'm reading. It's in the second paragraph that starts, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." And then I'm skipping a little bit. And it's talking about the establishment of governments. Now, this is what it says: that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The consent, that is the word I am focused on. Permission for something to happen or agreement to do something. That is what the word consent means, as I'm sure you all know. So this document is saying that the way that governments are supposed to be run is dependent upon or contingent on the consent of the governed. So let me start this conversation by asking you, when did you give your permission to be governed by other people? Or did you? Did you give your permission? If so, when? When did you agree to this? Now, I already know the answer. That's why this is a rhetorical question. But the question is important to ask because it makes you think. We never gave our consent. Why? Because we were just born into a system and expected to fall in line. Now, I know that you know this already. I know that you know this. But regardless, it is something to consider. Because if consent is taken away, meaning that the people no longer allow themselves to be ruled over by other people, the people stand up and say, I no longer consent. And I'm talking about the people as a whole, not just a few. What happens? There is no longer government. People are no longer being governed by other people. That's all it takes. That's all it would take. But although that's all it would take, and I'm saying it in this very simplistic way as if it was just easy to do, I understand that the thought of that is crazy to people. No longer consenting to the government, like what? That is not even an idea. That's not even a thought. So this is the part I wanted to bring up before I continue the conversation. I understand that doing anything about what I'm referring to right now is going to be the hard part. Not only is the doing the hard part just for the sake of doing something, but also because it's hard to figure out what to do. And I believe that is why nothing gets done, seemingly. Maybe little things here and there, little movements come up, but they don't really amount to much. They fizzle out quickly, or they're not making enough of an impact. So the reason for this, in my opinion, is that we're doing it wrong. Just to be blunt, we're doing it wrong. We're kind of like putting the carriage before the horse, as the saying goes. We're trying to figure out what we need to do before we get to the right mindset. Because the consciousness level that I'm referring to, the type of power that would come from this level of consciousness, I believe would move us, humanity, in a different direction. But it's going to start with people changing their mind over and becoming powerful within themselves and knowing who they are and what they are and who they need to submit to or not. So what I need to ask you of you going forward with these conversations is that you suspend just for a time your desire to figure out or discuss what comes next. So what are we going to do about it? So what's the answer? That's a lot of times what happens when I say that people put the cart or the carriage before the horse. They start jumping to that part. And it's not that those conversations are not important or that we don't need to have them, because we do. But I believe that the time is not yet to have the conversations about what we're going to do, because it's hard for people to even agree on what to do. And so that is where the immobilization comes from. People can't agree on the steps to take, and so they don't take any steps. And so then nothing really gets done. Or you have one group over here doing a little bit and another group over here doing it their way, and it's just not enough. And people always talk about unity. And I totally agree that we do need to have a unified approach. But there is more than one way to achieve that. If I am standing on a principle that is so basic that it cannot be challenged and it cannot be denied, and I'm standing over here in my space, and billions of people in the world are standing in that same mindset with that same power, then we are unified. We don't have to all come together online and collaborate and figure out what we're about to do. No, we just all need to stand with that power and with that type of energy, putting these people on notice that no, we do not need to submit to you. Why? Because we are grown ass people. We're not talking about children here. Children are under the authority of their parents when they live in their parents' home. We have grown up and gotten out of our parents' houses. We are taking care of ourselves. We are now self-sufficient. We do not answer to our own parents. Why you think we gonna answer to you? And when enough people get to that mindset and is willing to stand on that, that's when we start having the conversation about what we're going to do. Because at that point, even if we don't agree on exactly what to do, we all know what needs to be done. And we could go about it in different ways, but it will still be accomplished. The will of the people will still be accomplished. But we have to get to that place. And so if you could just do that by suspending that need to ask those questions right now, and let's just work on breaking down some of these beliefs and getting out of them, getting rid of them, and making our minds over to being something else, being born again. It's a different way of viewing that, because really that just means a regeneration of the human spirit. I mean, people look at that in the Christianity sense, but we can look at that in this sense as well. Become new human beings, do something different than our ancestors have done, because they need our consent to govern. I'm not talking about being violent. We don't got to go in guns blazing, taking nothing down. We don't got to do any of that. All we have to do is stop fucking consenting. Okay? That's it. Now, listen, I wanted to mention this as well. I know that there are some people who is on this sovereign movement, right? That you're filling out this paperwork and you're getting your birth certificate and doing all of these. I don't even know all the details, but I do know it's a lot of paperwork. Okay. I've seen a lot of the requirements and a lot of the hoops you have to jump through to do all of that. Now, a lot of you who are doing that, kudos to you. Okay. I respect that. I was about to say, take my hat off. I mean, that's because some of these phrases are silly. I respect that. Okay. I'm not personally going to do that though, because just my personal perspective is that I don't have to. I put these people on notice by the words that are coming out of my mouth. Okay? I'm a grown ass woman, and that is all you need to know. If I say I don't consent, then I don't consent. I don't need to jump through your hoops and go through your system and fill out your paperwork and notarize my birth certificate and do all of that shit. I don't need to do that. Okay? That's my perspective. But you see, I still have the same mindset as those people who are going through that process of doing that sovereign movement. We think the same. These people don't got no hold on me. They don't got authority over me. So I'm taking myself out of their system and I'm going about it through this, in this way, so that they can be put on notice that they don't got a hold on me. And they can't pull me over in my car and tell me to do this or that, or tell me to come to court and all of that. Okay, we know, those who know about this movement knows what I'm referring to. But the reason why I brought this up is because when we get to a place where we have a big enough number of people on the same page mentally within themselves, we don't necessarily need to go about non-consenting, I guess I would say, in the same way. There are some who will decide to go and fill out the paperwork. And there are some like myself who will say, hell no, I ain't filling that shit out. But we're still both going to be resisting. You understand where I'm coming from with that? So it really doesn't matter if we're doing it in different ways. It's still going to ultimately end up being the same result. But if we were, before we get the numbers, trying to come to the table together, those who believe differently, like my perspective versus the sovereign, the perspective that some of those take, then we wouldn't get anywhere. We would be talking and they would say, no, the pen is mightier than the sword. You got to fill out the paperwork. And I'm like debating, like, no, we don't need to do all that. You see? And we wouldn't get anywhere. So if we suspend all of that, and we just focus on getting ourselves how we need to be, standing powerfully within our own spirit, releasing the chains that's in our minds about what we have to do in this system, we will be ready when the time comes to make the stand, to take the stand. Because after all, we do not want history to continue to repeat itself, do we? That's a cliche saying in a lot of ways. People use that. And I don't know about everybody. I can't say what people do all the time, but me, I know when I have used that in the past, at times, I didn't think about the meaning. I just would say it. Yeah, you know what they say, history repeats itself. But that statement is so profound, and it really has some really heavy implications if you think about that. When it comes to humanity, history is only repeating itself because people keep doing the same shit. People do the same things, era after era, civilization after civilization, keep doing the same stuff, it seems. The mindsets of people are similar, apparently, to where people keep getting themselves in situations where they are bowing down to a group of people, allowing other people to rule over them. Monarchies, oligarchies, elites, governments, it's the same concept. It's a humanity issue. It's a people issue. We got to get to the bottom of that. History only repeats itself until people start to do something different. So the question is, are we making history or are we about to make the future? Because if we do the same things our ancestors did, then our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will look back at our generation and say, the same old thing, history repeats itself, because we didn't do anything. We didn't do anything different. So it ended up being the same thing. It just looked a little bit different, but it's the same. So we got to do something different. And that starts with the mind, because let's face it, we were given this world. We were given this system, meaning we were born into it, and we were told what it is and what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to behave, what we're supposed to believe. We were given documentation to show us what it is and what we're supposed to believe. We were sent to these schools to indoctrinate us about what we're supposed to believe and how we're supposed to behave. And I know I'm being redundant. I keep saying the same thing, but that is the nature of brainwashing, repetition. And we've all had it throughout our lives. And what has happened as far as making history continue to repeat itself is that people seem to not snap out of this. They keep passing it down to their children. That's how it happened to us. That's how it happened to our parents and our grandparents and before that and before that. But now it's time for that to change. It's time for us to begin to shape the future and create the future rather than just simply being history, creating history and continuing to perpetuate the same things that our ancestors have perpetuated. And so hopefully this gave you a little to think about. I had some other things I wanted to talk about, but I want to keep these somewhat short, these episodes. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you guys next week. I hope that you enjoy your week and that you begin to think differently about who you are and start to move differently as a result of that. Talk to you soon.
Wake up.
It's about seeking truth. It's about speaking truth. It's about keeping it real. That's what we do at Truth Seeker Nation. We keep it 100. Real talk all the time. Let's get it.